When I was 3, my grandpa died. Everyone in my family thinks that I was too little to remember him, but I do. I remember a salt and pepper mustache on top of a smile that could disarm the terrorists inside of your heart and replace them with peace and love. How can you forget the man that taught you that hate was not an option? Hate was never an option. Hate was the option that you were never supposed to choose. Hate was the big red button that released the missile that destroyed the world. But when he died, I started to look at that big red button a little closer. It was actually pretty plain looking for a button. If I didn't know any better, I would have pressed it by accident. To warn myself, I put a label on it. It read, "Hate button. Don't press it." I felt good knowing that I'd never end up pressing it due to that label. When I was 5, I ripped that label clean off. It was my first day at school, and a kid told me that I wasn't black. I was dirty. I didn't know what to say. I was heartbroken. I was in pain. I went home and stared at that button long and hard, never pressing it, just staring. 2 days later, my city flooded. See, the thing about New Orleans is that it's built like a bowl. So every time it rains, instead of just filtering out, it collects in the center of the city. Somehow, I picked up that trait. When we left, we could only fill my mom's car with so many things, so we took clothes and medications and papers and pictures and buttons. We took the one for love and we took the one for hate, and I placed them both in my chest, side by side next to each other, fire next to ice, dark next to light, button next to button. When I was 6, a boy at school destroyed my papier-mâché project. I watched him, that bowl inside of me, filling up with pain and sadness and despair as he stomped and smashed all over my poor giraffe. We both got sent to the principal's office so they could talk about what happened. I remember the hushed whispers of the teachers behind closed doors and how they forgot to close the door and how they forgot to whisper. I think it was her fault. I was confused. What did I do? Of course it was her fault. You know how her kind is. I never knew what this meant until my 7th birthday. That was the first time I tried to hurt myself. I sat there alone in my room past my bedtime, past the time it was still okay for me to be aware of the world in all of its entirety. I scratched at my skin like it was a lottery ticket, hoping that if I scratched hard enough, I would win a prize. All I got were the streams of blood that coated my pillow and my sheets and my heart. I stayed up late, scrubbing at the sheets and scrubbing at my eyes because I could not stop the flow of self-loathing that went along with the flow of blood that bled out of my arm. The next morning, my mom walked into my room and saw the wet sheets and the tears in my eyes and immediately assumed that I had wet the bed. She hugged me and told me that it was okay, that she wasn't mad at me, and that it would get better. To this day, I still have trouble believing her. She saw my arm and she asked me what happened. I could hear angels in my head screaming at me, saying that I needed to tell the truth, saying that I needed to tell her what was wrong with me so she could fix it. But I didn't. I couldn't. How could you tell your mom that you smashed your hand on that button, but the only person that felt that missile that you had launched was yourself? How do you admit that at age 7? I lied. I said that I had a rash, and that I was scratching at it in my sleep probably. To this day, I still don't think she put 2 and 2 together to get the pain that I felt in my heart, that I still feel in my heart every time I laugh or smile. When I was 10, I started babysitting my cousins. I was the oldest that was still a kid, so I was constantly left with that responsibility. I only had to babysit one cousin this time, a girl. She and I weren't close because that portion of our family lived in the northeast like a safe haven away from the crazy that was us, so I never got to see her as much as I would like. Everyone said that we were the exact same person, and I couldn't see it. We may have looked exactly the same, and we may have talked similarly, but we were not the same person. I walked into her bedroom expecting to find her reading on her bed, but instead I found her scratching at her arm like she was trying to win the lottery, like she was trying to win a prize. Now I could see what everyone meant when they said that we were alike. She was me so many years back, before my hand had smashed on that button. I grabbed her and hugged her tight. "Sweetie, why are you doing this to yourself?" A kid at school had called her dirty. I could see her hand reaching for that button. I could see her ready to give up like I gave up. I could see her becoming me in front of my eyes. But she wasn't dirty. She was pure and clean and nice and sweet, and she was everything that everyone hopes their child would become. She was beautiful. She was like the radiating sun that all of us revolved around. She was amazing. He was wrong, I told her. I ripped that button out of her hands. It wasn't an option. It was never an option. I would not allow her to release that missile like I had. I didn't want her to go through what I went through. I didn't want her to have to wait 6.5 years before 3 people came along and convinced her that there was nothing wrong with her. I didn't want to have her pick up the broken fragments of her self-confidence and staple them to her heart in an impenetrable cocoon of self-loathing and sarcasm. I didn't want her to fall in love with the wrong person for all of the wrong reasons. I wanted her to be happy. I want her to realize that life is a fatal disease and that living it is your bucket list, and that every person that you meet is just another person in your corner rooting for you. I didn't want to see the word beautiful carved into her arm as a reminder of what she cannot achieve in her mind. I don't want her to end up like me. I want to grow up to be like her.